So welcome to the Tesla Bulls podcast. I'm your host, Mark Stein. This is the first installment of the podcast, so we're really excited to be here. There are plenty of excellent podcasts that cover breaking Tesla news and offer valuable commentary. Some of my favorite go-tos are Tesla Daily, Tesla Economist, Electrified, and Dave Lee on investing. But in this podcast, my goal is not only to delve into emerging products like the Cybertruck and full self-driving, but to do a deep dive into the unique and little discussed aspects of the vast Tesla brand, from Tesla insurance to upcoming products like the heat pump and HVAC. I'll interview investors who are bullish on Tesla, and together we'll examine the topics that make Tesla a multifaceted, compelling investment. Through this podcast, I hope to show the viewers that investing in Tesla isn't putting all of your eggs in one basket. Instead, you'll be casting a wide net around multiple businesses, all with just one investment. We won't be blind to the challenges that Tesla faces, but we'll address them head on so as to provide balance in the midst of our bullishness. Please be generous with your comments and questions and help us spread the word of the podcast if you like what we're doing. So thanks for tuning in to Tesla Bulls podcast, and I hope you enjoyed the show. So my first guest is Hans Nelson. You've seen him on Farzad's podcast, and he actually has started his own podcast. So Hans, welcome to the podcast and pop in.
Hi, Mark. I'm excited to be here and speak with you today. And of course, I love this topic, and so I'm excited to see where the conversation will take us.
Awesome. Well, let's get started with the obvious first question on a Tesla Bulls podcast. What led you to become a Tesla Bull?
It's kind of honestly, it's been so long now, and maybe not as long as some others. I haven't been here since 2012, 2013, like many. But it was probably the mid 2010s. I had some friends who, one of them went to work for SpaceX, another of them pre-ordered a Model 3 very early on and had to wait, several years to finally take delivery. And so that was one of the first things that got it onto my radar. And then I remember somehow coming across Tim Urban's Wait But Why podcast or blog. And then I was reading some of those things. And then, of course, he did the series on Elon Musk where he did a post on Tesla and then on SpaceX and eventually Neuralink as well. And then also did the Chef and His Secret Sauce blog post on Elon and his brain software. And that really intrigued me and kind of got the juices flowing. And at the same time, I had begun managing my own retirement portfolio in about 2012. And at the time, I was just kind of dipping my toes in. I was coming from a background that was heavily exposed to Dave Ramsey. And so I was following his approach for the most part, but definitely doing Dave-ish, as he would say. And the more that I was self-managing and then learning about Tesla as a company and their technology, eventually I just became more and more interested in it. And then I started watching things like Hyperchange TV, the early days of Dave Lee on investing, and Tesla Daily. And I think I probably made my first investment somewhere between 2017 and 2018. I could probably dig up those records, and I probably should because I never can remember specifically when it was. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning, and it has snowballed from there into a pretty large portion of my time that I spend just researching and engaging in the discussion surrounding Tesla, Elon Musk, SpaceX, all of it. So,
I saw an episode on Dave Ramsey's show a couple of years ago, and he was scratching his head and not really getting it, although I think it was his daughter who had purchased one.
Yes.
And so that opened his eyes, and he was really curious. But at the time, I think he was balking at recommending that his caller invest in one because of the price tag at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd
Well, and
be
it's
curious to
definitely a
see.
difficult thing for someone from that background to wrap their heads around because it is different in so many ways. You know, the economic model is a different model since it's a higher upfront purchase price, but much lower operating costs over time. And you can, like, I don't even know at that point if the data was really in yet on total cost of ownership of something like a Model 3 versus a Camry, which, you know, ARK Invest later did the research and put that data out. And so some of those things weren't as clear at first. And yeah, I can understand where he was coming from, even though at the time I remember watching the episode and thinking, yeah, you just don't get it yet. And I mean, to be fair, that's not what he's spending his time doing his research on either. So,
Sure. So talk a little bit about your background and what it is in your background that sort of leads to this interest and fascination with Tesla. How do you connect?
so I went to school, got an engineering degree, an engineering technology degree from Laterno University to be exact. And so it's a little bit more of a hands-on engineering degree that's not quite as math intensive. Um, and I've always been fascinated in technology. And I remember very specifically my experience with Apple. I've come to love Apple products, but in my younger years, especially teenage and through college, early 20s, I was very much put off by Steve Jobs specifically and the amount of control that he exerted over their products. And I wanted to have flexibility to use them in ways that I wanted to, that apparently Steve did not want me to. And so I stayed away from that. I steered clear. But then as I kind of slowly had my eyes open to the wonders of Apple and Mac products and the benefits of the ecosystem. And then as they also expanded the capability of their products to cover more of the use cases that I was interested in, I realized that there were so many things early on that I had taken offense to or had dismissed in the Apple story that I should have, like, with hindsight being 2020, I should have seen, man, this has an incredible number of very loyal and enthusiastic fans who will just bombard me and annoy the crap out of me and try and tell me, hey, I'm missing the greatest thing in the world. And that right there is a very powerful thing. So that kind of combined with my engineering background and my interest in technology, when I saw that same dynamic starting to pop up around Tesla, it piqued my interest and it caused me to start digging in a little bit more. And instead of just jumping on or, you know, being resistant and kind of a Luddite like I had in the past, it turned on my curiosity light bulb. And so, yeah, that was the lead in that got me interested in Tesla, and also just watching what Elon Musk was able to accomplish. Even, you know, even the early days of Falcon 9 before they landed, it was very evident that he was able to accomplish things that no one else was able to accomplish. And so seeing this combination of excellence in execution, and then knowing firsthand, having a number of my friends be very interested in working for Tesla or SpaceX. I had a friend in graduate school who actually went on and he still works at SpaceX. Seeing the aura and the pull that Elon had in the engineering community was also another thing that piqued my interest. And then looking into their technology, and you can see, yeah, there's something different here. And so those were all the things that really got me to focus on this. And then also Kathy Wood, I remember I got turned on to her early on in the beginning of her funds, just because like it made headlines that she had invested a large amount in Bitcoin and was the first institutional investor to do that. And so I realized that she was somebody who thought a little bit differently. And then the more I started to follow Kathy Wood and ARK Invest, I started to learn a lot about both manufacturing and technology and disruptive innovation. I read The Innovator's Dilemma. And so that was like a whole nother side of educating myself as an investor and learning about how not just the core technology works, but also how business surrounding technology works. That when I looked at the things that they were saying, and then I looked at Tesla, I was like, this company is just uniquely positioned, uniquely architected to, well, and then also it's the only one of Elon Musk's companies that actually I can invest in as a public market investor. I don't have the type of resources that it takes to get into a SpaceX investment or anything else. So yeah, it's the only Elon Musk company that I have access to, but it's a pretty fascinating and interesting company. And all of that really, the more that I researched and the more that I read, the more conviction I built up over time, and the more of my retirement portfolio ended up being allocated to Tesla.
Interesting. I see a lot of similarities with Steve Jobs. Certainly the design from the inside out instead of taking polls, and there's some egotism that goes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I designed the iPhone for what I wanted to see happen, and not sampling public opinion.
Yep.
And same with Elon's designs and the treats that come at holiday time. They're all, you can tell they're all from him and his sense of humor. I think one thing that distinguishes the two of them is that I've never heard that Elon has the anger level and the disrespectfulness that Steve Jobs had towards
Mm-hmm.
people, and dismissiveness. He seems to be really empowering people around him and giving a lot of autonomy, as flat as the Tesla
Hierarchy.
hierarchy is, and being able to jump in and do things whenever. So there are a lot of similarities, but
Mm-hmm.
quite a few differences.
Yes.
Do you feel like Elon is not only the greatest entrepreneur of our time, but possibly of all times?
Oh, definitely. I think if he is successful in his current endeavors, and this is not to say anything about the next projects that he might tackle, there'll be some of the largest 0 to 1 step changes that we've had in human history. And so for him to lead the charge on either space exploration the way that he is, or transitioning the world to sustainable energy like he is, not to mention anything with social media or the Boring Company, either one of those things would make him potentially one of the most impactful business leaders in human history, on par with a Rockefeller or a Carnegie. But for him to be able to do multiple of those things at once makes him absolutely unique. And then the other thing that you have to layer in there is we still don't know what the future of Neuralink looks like. And through their pursuit of real world AI at Tesla, he also has a very significant opportunity to shape a literal evolution in human capability. Um, that like that it's hard to even know how to think about that and what potential that holds for our future, both positive and negative. And the fact that he is simultaneously in a position to have such a large impact on every single one of those fronts is incredible, exciting, scary. I mean, all of the above.
Yep. And the robber barons, they disrupted usually one industry at a time:
Mm-hmm.
railroads, shipping, um, energy, and not multiple um, industries at the same time. So since this is the Tesla Bulls podcast, give your high level bull case when you're talking to a friend or a relative who doesn't get it. Tesla's not on their radar. We'll focus back on Tesla now. what is your high level bull case, and which of the products do you focus on? Give us your best bull case, mid to high level, and we'll dig into specifics later.
Yeah, I think some of that would be a little bit dependent on the person that I'm talking to. I think for a general audience that maybe doesn't have an engineering background, I would stick closer to a Gary Black type bull case and just say EVs are obviously the future of transportation. And any company that can be successful in transitioning the world to sustainable energy is a company that has a massive opportunity for success going forward. And then when you look at the players that are on the field, Tesla is obviously the leader in both unit deliveries and brand. And that right there probably gets to the heart of the thing that is most compelling to a general audience. Now, those are not the things that necessarily excite me the most, but I think those are probably some of the most accessible arguments. And then you can also go back and just say, okay, if this man can land rockets from space, then he's very good at executing. And so a lot of the worries that you might have about Tesla's future and their ability to deal with competition, you know, when did Ford ever land a rocket? Oh yeah, they didn't. When did GM ever? I mean, Tesla, as a small startup auto company, was able to survive the 2008 recession without declaring bankruptcy and without getting a huge bailout from the government. They did get a nice DOE loan that was helpful, but that was much different than a bailout, and they paid it back. And whereas GM was not able to do that, and we bailed them out. And so, you know, I think they're unique within the American car company landscape in that them and Ford are the only two that have not gone bankrupt. And at this point in time, Ford just has a very weak balance sheet compared to Tesla. And then when you look at Tesla's ability to engineer and deliver amazing EVs, which are the future of transportation, not ICE pickup trucks, which are the past of transportation, it becomes clear which of those companies deserves a good future and that you can put your money into with a little bit of safety in mind.
How about full self-driving? How important do you think that is to the Tesla story?
I think it's incredibly important. I'm incredibly excited about it. It's the type of thing that when I have conversations with people, most time it's unless they are someone who is interested in technology, it almost is counterproductive to explaining the importance and significance of Tesla because it sounds like such a Jetson sci-fi thing. And a lot of people's gut response is, I don't ever want my car to drive me around anywhere. I want to have control. And so when you start talking about a company that's trying to make this a real possibility, and there very much this can be a somewhat age-gated topic that usually it's an older audience that I'm talking to that struggles with that idea, whereas younger people, you know, they love the idea of having their cars drive them. So, but as far as the core of the argument, regardless of whether or not Elon is able to make what we would call a quote unquote level 5 autonomy vehicle, which can operate in any environment, anywhere without human supervision or intervention, that you could send it to go pick up your kids, you could summon it, it could drive to you empty, it could be a robo-taxi. A lot of these types of functions, it will be incredible if we can do that. But even pursuing that goal gets you so much useful, valuable, monetizable functionality, regardless of whether or not we're able to get to that full robotaxi future, that people, and this is a conversation that I've had a little bit with Gary Black, and I'm hoping to get to dig into more with him, that, you know, we don't need it to reach level 5 to have massive economic impact. And if I've actually got a little bit of a model that I can pull up if you'd like to look at it on what just like a rough idea of what a potential future might look like for Tesla with their FSD functionality that brings in a lot of revenue to the company without necessarily getting all the way to robotaxi. Let's see if I can.
Sure, I've enabled you to screen share. Go ahead. If you
Yeah,
have
let
it
me
handy.
get that pulled up. Okay.
And while you're doing that, just again, similar to the landing of rockets, just the audacity of Elon to tackle this problem without fear, and then to do things like taking radar off,
Mm-hmm.
and going with vision only. The audacity of that. And it looks like, even though they may reintroduce a higher level radar as an assist, it looks like it's really helped move things along and eliminate some of the conflicts. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think to touch on what you just mentioned, for anyone who has never read um, Tim Urban's blog post, The Cook and the Chef, I highly, highly recommend it. And if you're not a reader, I also just completed, I'll be releasing it here on YouTube, a narrated audio version of that podcast or of that blog post, just because it's one of the most significant blog posts that I've read on Elon Musk or Tesla ever. And I think at this point in time where there is a lot of noise surrounding the story of Tesla, that it's an important thing to share with people. And so I wanted to create an audio version for people who are really not as much readers. And so I have a YouTube channel called Dear Sophia that only has a few episodes out on it so far, but I'll be releasing that here in the next day or two. I'm just working on finalizing the thumbnail for that. But the content is done. Anyways, I would highly recommend that because it helps you to understand how Elon is making decisions and the fact that he really, really values feedback on his inventive process. And so he's taking in a landscape and saying, okay, what is possible today? Not what does conventional wisdom say is possible? What is the actual physical possibility that is constrained only by the current state of technology and the current understanding of physics? And then, okay, let me figure out something that's possible within those two constraints and create an easy to test version of that thing, and then get as much feedback as possible. And so when we see him doing things like removing radar or in Twitter releasing features and taking them back and moving them, like it feels somewhat chaotic from the outside, but it's not chaotic. It's a very methodical, rapid-paced cycle of innovation and iteration, and you have to be very comfortable with some of these things not working. In fact, you know that a lot of the things that you're going to try are not going to work, and he said as much. But by trying it, you're going to learn new information that helps you iterate to the next version, which will be more successful, and you're going to find that things that you thought were possible are not possible, and things that you didn't think were possible are possible, and you're able to craft your product to be able to accomplish things that no one ever dreamed were possible. And so that's kind of the context in which I view a lot of the things that Elon is doing that, other people may say, oh, he's messing up here, he's messing up there. And when you read Tim's blog post and then you look at what he's doing through that lens, it starts to make a whole different level of sense. But anyway, so here on the model, I probably should zoom in here to help. So this is a revenue subscription. I'll kind of build up to how we get there. I'm looking first at just how many units are going to be delivered. I want to know what the size of the overall fleet is going to be, and I take this all the way out to 2030. And so at the end of last year, the installed base was roughly 5 million vehicles. And then I anticipate that we'll deliver somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million vehicles this year. or sorry, there's roughly 3 million in the installed base at the end of 2022. And then, so that plus the 2 million that we'll produce this year will create an installed base at the end of 2023 of 5 million units. And so we just do that moving forward. I'm saying that we have 35% CAGR this year, and then that will diminish. So this is a model that is meant to appeal to someone like Gary Black, who is anticipating roughly 10 million units delivered in 2030 instead of 20. And, I think honestly that that's probably pretty fair. I know that Elon was spot on in his prediction for 500,000 produced and delivered in 2020. There are a lot of different types of challenges over the next decade that we may be able to get to 20 million, we may not. And I understand a conservative person not wanting to go ahead and assign that 20 million goal as an expectation for deliveries. And so that's what this model does, is it just says, okay, by 2030, we should be roughly at 10 million units delivered. If that is the case, and it follows kind of a declining average compound growth rate from 35% down to 20, that will have roughly 46 million Teslas in the overall fleet in 2030. So then there's an FSD subscription take rate assumption here that starts at 20% in 2023 and it increases to 55%. But I need to break down a little bit what that is comprised of. So I ran some polls on Twitter and I asked people, hey, if you had a car that could drive you, but you had to pay attention at all times, but it was pretty good, you only usually had to intervene 5 times a month on average, roughly, how much would you be willing to pay for that subscription? And so I got a weighted average of $65.90 is just what people on the poll, which is, not an incredibly scientific way. I have a skewed audience. Who knows who's responding to this poll, but, just kind of a rough number. This is what I came up with. That annualizes to about $800 a year in subscription revenue. So then I ran the same poll for level 3, which you don't have to pay attention unless the vehicle pings you and says, okay, hey, we're in a situation I'm a little bit less comfortable now. Please pay attention and be ready to take over if you need to. The average response on that was $156, which annualizes out to just under $1,900 a year. And then I also ran a level 4 poll, which said that you don't have to pay attention at all, but you could only use this for personal use. So this is something where you could be in the back seat. It can operate in any normal urban environment. It can't, I think that if I remember correctly, the distinction between level 4 and level 5 is that level 5 can operate in almost any weather conditions and almost any environment, whereas level 4 can operate in most weather conditions in a normal, like, urban environment, or even just like good quality roads. So that was the level 4 poll.
Let me interrupt you a second. To give real world data, is the current subscription model $99 or $199? What is it a month?
I think it's $199. I honestly don't know. And that is, just for the beta, which is probably less functional than the product that I have in mind here in the future. Okay. And then the weighted average for the level 4 was $290, so just under $300, and then annualized to about $3,500 a year. So with that context, what I expect is that somewhere in 2023 to 24 range, Tesla will begin offering a free trial of the FSD subscription that will last for a month or 2 months or several weeks. I'm not sure what it'll be, but they'll offer it for free, and anyone in the fleet can try this. And that on the back of offering that free trial, they will pursue a pricing model that is designed to maximize the number of people that are using FSD, and they will try and maximize the revenue that they can generate from that. And so they want both take rate to increase and also, of course, total revenue. My current thesis is that they currently do not want to maximize the number of users of FSD beta, that until the system reaches a level of safety that they view as significantly higher than the average human, that they want to only have highly motivated, highly safe drivers using the system so that they can perfect it, make it safer. And so getting too many people in, or getting a mix of people in who are not highly safety conscious, could actually postpone and delay this project in the long term. And so they're actively trying to keep people out of the beta, not actively trying to get people into the beta. There's more interest for people to use the beta than Tesla wants. And so I think that's why the current pricing model is so prohibitive, either the $15,000 to purchase it outright, or the subscription even at $200 a month. I've spoken to a number of people who are like, it just is not functional enough for me to pay that much money for that product. And I think that that is specifically by design on Tesla's part, that they don't want random Joe Blow users to be part of this FSD beta testing group that is helping them to refine the product. But I expect that to change once the product surpasses a level of safety that they view will not be a hindrance to the image of the product in the long term from a safety perspective. And so, and I view that free trial offering as the external signal that we as investors can look at to say, okay, Tesla now has that level of confidence that when they, to me, the first day that they offer a free trial that anyone in the United States can sign up for and download and use the same day, that will be the day that I know that FSD has reached the next level of functionality and capability.
Maybe a
and
holiday,
so,
maybe part of their holiday gift.
oh, and they are getting like it, now the fact that FSD beta is open to where it can be used by anyone, that signals that we're getting closer. But there's a difference between that, which you still have to pay those higher prices, which are still kind of a gate, and then going to the next level of saying, okay, free trial. Now I want literally millions of people potentially to come in and use this product versus the few 100,000 that are currently paying, either have paid for it in the past or are willing to pay the $200 subscription. And so these take rates that are in here are also based on the prices that I've got down here, where in 2023, the only level of functionality that I assume is this level 2 functionality. And so this $600 ARR is just, roughly, it's actually less than this $790. But I think in 2024, I have it, so it's just equal to that. So in 2023 and 2024, I assume that the average ARR that they can get at those price points, which, like I said, is that $600 is actually below what they're currently charging, but they're not getting a 20% take rate either. So I don't know. There's kind of a give and take there on what they will end up being able to monetize this year, but this year is not really the focus of the model. It's kind of running forward. And so in 2024, I say, okay, now we have this level 2, and that they're pricing it at this point to maximize the number of people that are willing to use it and the amount of money that they can generate from it. But then in 2025, I anticipate that somewhere around that time, they will reach this level 3 functionality. And that when they do that, they will offer both options to consumers, that you can pay the lower price and get level 2 functionality, or you can pay a higher price and you can get the higher functionality. Now, I don't know if they will or will not do that, but just in constructing the model, it was a way that I could segment out there's a variety of users with a variety of interests in what they want from the system. Let's create a product for them and then price it in such a way that they're willing to go ahead and pony up and pay the cash for that. And so then I do the
Sort of
same
like
thing
driver assist, sort of like driver
Mhm.
assist for some of the other products, the other autos.
Yeah, yep. Well, and a very highly functional driver assist. Um, So I mean, this is full self-driving in every instance. So it would be like the level 2 expectation is that you can use this in cities, you can use this on highways, you can use it in any context. You're just always responsible to supervise the system, and they're going to have all their nags in place. So if you're not with your hand on the steering wheel, if you're not looking at the road, these types of things. Whereas level 3, it's basically removing those nags that, hey, you don't have to pay attention unless the system notifies you, hey, you need to pay attention. And then if you don't within a certain amount of time, it will probably just pull over to the side of the road and you won't be able to go anywhere. Um, and then on level 4, you wouldn't even necessarily need to be able to take responsibility for the vehicle at all. And I think, let's see, where in the model do I have it? So that's in 2026, I anticipate, and this could change wildly. Like it may not be 2026, but I do anticipate that by 2030, definitely we can get there. And so if we have, if we have roughly almost 50 million vehicles on the road in 2020 or in 2030, and then we evenly distribute the oh, yeah, I just moved this forward. Okay, yeah, so we evenly distribute that the users. So there are 55% of the users will opt into the system, and a third of them will be paying for the level 2 system, a third of them will be paying for the level 3 system, and a third of them will be paying for the level 4 system. I think it's pretty conservative to say that they could generate this $2,000 a year in recurring revenue for roughly over half of their fleet. And that means that Tesla in that scenario would end up generating almost $52 billion of almost pure bottom line net profits from this product. And so that's kind of a huge number. It's more, it's much more operating profit than they have right now, by a significant margin. And like I said, this doesn't anticipate, it does kind of anticipate a highly functional system, but not one that has commercial use cases. And so it's not a robo-taxi. You can't send it to, from a regulatory standpoint, it means that if they're able to get the system to be functional and safe, this is a product that they can offer that does not require the United States or any other government to say, yes, you can use this as a commercial product. It can be a robotaxi. It can transport someone else and take liability for transporting them, and you can make money from it. Like that's a very different set of challenges and hurdles that have to be overcome in that world than just, hey, we've actually been able to execute on creating the level of functionality within the software that we anticipate. And so if we do that and we assign a 30 multiple and we say that it's 60% likely that that will occur, and we'd like to make a 20% hurdle rate on our investment, and I can't remember what my shares, so this is 3% growth in shares per year between now and 2030, that in today's valuation that should add about $67.50 of incremental value to today's stock price if you believe in the way that this model is constructed. Now, I probably wouldn't assign that incremental value to the stock right now. I would probably wait until those free trials are actually offered. But this is one of the things that I'm really excited for that I don't hear many other people talking about is, what is the SaaS revenue potential for FSD in a world where we never have regulatory approval to operate robotaxis, because people immediately want to go all the way down the robotaxi trail, and it's extremely exciting. Like, the numbers are absolutely bonkers what's possible in that world. But I want to know, okay, what are the in-between steps from here to there, and what do those look like, and what's the potential? And this was my attempt to model that. And the exercise was really good. It helped me to solidify some of my confidence in, and especially at these price levels, like $67.50, that's more than half of today's stock price. And so, it's very easy to justify the investment case for Tesla just based on auto growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And so then if you get options like this that Tesla is pursuing, that are basically free options, a lot of people call them Musk options. That's one of Joe Justice's favorite terms. That it's incredible to be able to buy an investment that has, and this is just one example. Like, we haven't talked about Cybertruck, we haven't talked about Tesla Bot, we haven't talked about Dojo and the possibilities of offering AI training as a service. We haven't talked about energy, and energy is incredibly exciting. We haven't talked about any of those things. Just this one model, in my mind, says, hey, I've got at least a 50% upside on the stock from one little business unit that Tesla is operating in a host of business units. And I just don't know where else in technology I can find an investment like that.
And if I can share some observations, this is very conservative, because
very.
If they go the route of robotaxi, and let's just say let's say 2025 that they make it, and the progress and the gap is narrowing, all the time. So if they go that route, and they even discourage by people from buying full self-driving by jacking up the price because the value is there, then this is dwarfed by that. So I think you're being really conservative. I would be curious to see if Gary Black, I don't think he's going to buy into anything regarding pricing in full self-driving this year, maybe until it's happening. He's not going to buy it.
Exactly.
But I think this is a compelling case for the value of it, short of robotaxi, full self-driving. I think it's a compelling case just for the dollar value with a very conservative projection.
And to steelman the opposing case to this model, and one of the reasons I made a lot of more conservative assumptions, is that people outside of the Tesla bubble are going to basically by default assume that other competitors will be able to offer competing products that have similar levels of functionality that compete away Tesla's ability to have pricing power on FSD. I think that is not very, like, if Tesla is able to offer FSD at the levels of functionality that they are aiming to, they're currently pursuing a completely unique path to get there. If they get there, that means that their path worked, and that does not tell me anything about any of the other paths' ability to work. And so if they get there, it is highly likely that all of their other competitors, whether that be Waymo or Cruise or even any of the Chinese players like Xiaoping or BYD, I'm not fully versed in what all the autonomous driving startups are or people that are pursuing that in China, but I know that there are quite a few. But to my knowledge, none of them are pursuing a vision first approach to full self-driving. And definitely none that are using AI to the degree, using large machine learning models to operate their perception and planning stacks to the level that Tesla is. And so, if they get there, that means that anyone else will pretty much have to start over. Now, they will have a proof of concept to know, okay, these are the things that work, these are the things that don't work. And so it won't be a complete pursuit in the dark of how to get there, but they'll be faced with a challenge of how do you get the data that you need to create those models. And we've seen from products like Google Search that if you don't have the data, it's really, really, really hard to offer a competing product. Even if you know how the algorithms work, you need the data to feed the algorithms in order to tune all those weights just right to be able to achieve a level of functionality. And so I'm personally less convinced that competitors will be able to offer anything that's really equivalent in a short-term time frame. I think it'll take a few years for them to be able to do that. But that being said, like I said, this model is aimed at a person who's not going to come at this with those assumptions. And so by being a little bit more conservative, I've got a little bit more common ground with them, and we don't have to throw the whole thing out because they just won't agree with me on any of those assumptions.
And also price in licensing this to the other companies that are arguably 3 to 5 years behind. The licensing value of this full self-driving, even if it's not level 5 or even level 4, that potential is amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. And this is a kind of deep diving that I want to do on this channel, so that we're hitting exactly what I wanted to do. So thank you so much.
You're
for
welcome.
That. Have we finished with this part?
Yep. That's everything that I wanted to go into here in the in this sheet. And so, yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to continue to dive in, or we can kind of move on.
Why don't we shift gears and let's take on one more topic, and that's the Cybertruck, since that's the product that's, I'm going to very carefully say, the next in line because of the delays. Did you hear the statement that Elon made a couple of months ago that the specialty, and it might have even been in Everyday Astronaut about SpaceX, but he said that we specialize in taking the impossible and making it late.
Yes.
So
yeah. It was in that it was in that episode, and yeah, that really did stand out to me as well. I remember that statement. And it's so true. They have done that. And I think, in the environment of the past few years, it's very understandable. First of all, okay, we'll ask the question, why is Cybertruck so late? And I think there are two reasons. First of all, the same thing that every manufacturer is dealing with, and that was supply chain disruption throughout COVID 2020, 2021, and even up and down supply chain disruptions here in 2022, or last year in 2022, especially in China, as they were pursuing their zero COVID policy. And 4680 maybe you can tell how I feel about that. Yep, 4680 delays. The other thing, though, is the unexpected amount of demand I think that they had for Model Y, and just the amount of, so if 4680s are taking a little bit longer to iron out all the kinks to make that a product that they can manufacture at the volumes that they need to manufacture at the level of quality that they need to, and then you've got a product like Model Y that is just eating up all the batteries that you can make, that puts you in a little bit of just a pickle. You've got to decide, how do I want to allocate these cells? And I think most of the time when I'm thinking about Tesla and the products that they're able to make, I'm thinking about it from a cell constraint standpoint, and their decisions make sense. If you can deliver more vehicles with the same amount of batteries, you make more money off of those batteries. I think the Model Y is going to, like, if you look at the purchase price per kilowatt hour on a Model Y, it's going to be, you make a lot more money per kilowatt hour on a Model Y versus something like a Cybertruck that's going to need a huge battery. So from that perspective, it makes sense. But more important than that is back to Tesla's core mission, which is to accelerate the advent of sustainable transportation. And you can get more miles driven by an EV when you deliver more Model Ys than Cybertruck. And so it makes total sense to go ahead and prioritize shipping more Model Ys, delaying Cybertruck a little bit, and then you can enter that market when your cell supply is caught up. It's been incredible to see just the number of contracts that they have with external suppliers on top of their plans to crank out tons and tons of 4680s. So they are doing everything that they can to supply as much battery production into the future. You know, when they said, I think it was 3 terawatt hours in 2030 at Battery Day, that sounds right-ish. I can't remember what the exact number was, but that was in-house production. At the rate that they're going, I think their external suppliers should be able to keep up or potentially even exceed that, because LFP batteries are much faster and easier to scale than the nickel-based batteries. And Tesla was primarily focused on creating 3 terawatt hours of high nickel batteries for the higher energy density needs. And so I think they're going to rely mostly on external suppliers for LFP batteries. And I foresee in 2030, actually the majority of batteries going into Tesla products being LFP rather than high nickel. And so there's a very easy future where you can anticipate that Tesla's consuming much, much more than 3 terawatt hours of batteries in 2030. And then when you think about, okay, what's the product mix that, say, 6 or 7 or 10 terawatt hours of batteries can support? That's really fun to think about, both from an energy standpoint, but also from a vehicle standpoint, where you've got trucks and vans and potentially some sort of eVTOL and all kinds of exciting things in the pipeline there. But bring it back to Cybertruck, I think we're at the point where we have the ability to manufacture those cells in enough volume to begin the ramp on Cybertruck. And it's going to be an incredibly exciting product. You know, there's nothing like it. I've talked about this on Farzad's podcast, that every category that Tesla has entered, they end up basically completely destroying that category from a unit deliveries perspective. That, you know, you're not supposed to be able to sell as many luxury sedans as the Model 3 sells when you compare it to something like a BMW or a Lexus or a Mercedes or any of these things. But that's because it is a new product that creates a new category, that both from the cost of ownership standpoint, the technological capability standpoint, like you can get into the most luxurious vehicle made today and you're still using a technology interface that feels like it's at least 5 years old, if not older. And so you compare that to a Tesla that continues to update itself, and that is just a different experience. And for a culture that is more and more transition to people who have high expectations for the performance of their technology, that becomes a much larger determining factor in consumers' purchase preferences. And so Tesla delivers on that like no other auto manufacturer. And that is something that we'll see in the truck market as well. So when Cybertruck comes, not only does the interior perform at a level of technological excellence that surpasses any other pickup truck on the road, but also you've got this giant battery pack that you can use to power tools directly. You don't have to have some sort of an inverter. You don't have to carry around a generator. And it's able to do so many things on, you know, the suspension, being able to raise and lower the way that it can. It's going to be incredibly, towing, off-roading, functionality, utility. It's it's going to be much more of a Swiss Army knife truck than any current pickup truck, and it's going to appeal on that basis alone to far more people than a normal pickup truck. But then when you factor in just that brute force image that it has to it, like when people see these things driving around in their cities for the first time, there's just going to be an incredible amount of demand to be the person that gets to drive around in that vehicle. It's going to capture attention. I think that there's going to be an opportunity if someone wants to create a business for advertising, just create a system to identify anyone and everyone that owns a Cybertruck and buy advertising space on the sides of their vehicles to advertise your products, because that will be a brand image of coolness and a level of attention that you're not going to get in any other vehicle. So for all those reasons, I just think it's absolutely going to destroy the 1 million units delivered over whatever time period it takes them to ramp up to that level of production. That's an incredible amount of batteries that you would need to deliver that many Cybertrucks. But yeah, I think 1 million units isn't even going to scratch the surface of global demand for the Cybertruck, which is roughly what the F-150 delivers. And yeah, and that really spells a lot of doom and gloom for Ford and the other ICE manufacturers, because that's obviously their most profitable segment, and they haven't had to compete like against someone like Tesla in those segments yet. And so that gets pretty scary.
Did you hear the use case of contractors being able to send the Cybertruck to Home Depot for a will call drop, and they'll put it in the back and lock. You'll be able to remotely open the back cover, have them put the items in, and not even have to send somebody to go pick up supplies. Do you have a Cybertruck on order?
I have 3 on order that all have the full self-driving package reserved on them. I think I have 1 at the $10,000 rate and maybe 2 at the 12, or maybe it's 2 at the 10 and 1 at the 12. I can't remember. But yeah, I was kind of putting down deposits as I was able to for a little while there. I'm excited about that product. And then, just from one of my previous lives, I managed a cleaning company, and having to deal with drivers that didn't always pay the best attention really was a headache for me. And so as someone who, if I was managing a fleet of company vehicles for contractors, I sure would want to know that they had active safety features like the Cybertruck would have, and are going to be much less likely to get into an accident. Like that alone creates a lot more demand within the commercial fleet space.
Yep. I have 6 on order. One of the 3-motor, tri-motor, and the rest dual motors. And I locked in the first one, a single motor, at the 10,000 for full self-driving, and the rest I think were at 12. So, and I already launched my website as a driver to rent the Cybertrucks in my market. So I just launched it and put the ad with a QR code for people to click it on the door of my Prius. So let's see, let's wind up here. And this is exactly what I had hoped for all of the podcasts, but to have you do this deep dive, especially with the FSD, really met my expectation and hopes for this. Let's and be sure to send us the link for your podcast, and give us the information about it.
Yes, the podcast that I've been working on is called Dear Sophia, and Sophia is the Greek word for wisdom. And so it's just kind of a podcast dedicated to the pursuit of wisdom. It's a little bit esoteric, and I may end up needing to change that name down the line, but like Elon, I just want to start with something and get the ball rolling. I will be doing a number of things on that channel, but my primary long-term focus will be to actually host conversations probably similar to this in a lot of ways, where I dig into technical topics with very interesting, well-versed people, and then try and marry that with a little bit of discussion about their personal background. So, maybe what is a person's unique insight that they have come to over the course of their life? What is the power of that insight? And then how did they come upon that in this very weird, odd journey called life? And how can we connect with that and incorporate that into the way that we live and see the world? And I love drawing on a variety of perspectives and life experiences. I've got kind of a weird, eclectic, diverse experience myself, at probably more so than a lot of people my age, especially from the United States. And so that kind of gives me a value for exploring those types of experiences in other people, and then trying to, hopefully be someone who can bring that to a wider audience.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And as far as technology goes, we're in an incredible age. With Chat GPT and DALL-E coming out a few weeks ago, this era that we're in, Tesla, SpaceX included, to me is comparable to the iPhone era, and backed up a step back to the internet, the beginnings of the internet and the PC. I think we're in for a huge period in terms of pharmaceuticals, medical, AI. This is a really exciting time for somebody like us who's into technology and thrives on that. Well, so we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Any other ways? How do people reach you on Twitter?
My handle on Twitter is just at Hans C. Nelson.
Great.
And you can find me there. I share quite a bit of Tesla related stuff on there and interact with people on Twitter.
Good. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast. You were a great first guest, and
Thanks
I'll
for
look
having
forward
me.
to
I
more
really enjoyed it.
conversations. And we just scratched the surface on Cybertruck, not to mention all these other technologies that Tesla has in the pipeline. So let's commit to get together on a regular basis. I really enjoyed the depth of your analysis and your insights. So thanks so much for that.
Yep, I'd love to do that.
So thanks everybody for tuning in to the first Tesla Bulls podcast. Thanks again to Hans Nelson for his insights. If you enjoyed it, please like or comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be sure that you're alerted for future episodes. To learn more why Tesla is and will continue to be arguably the most innovative company on earth. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.